The call is coming from inside the house. We're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about cancel culture, deprogramming you, America's twisted up, horrid view of race. And we're going to have a little fun at the end, too. All that's coming up right now on I'm Right. We're going to do a lot of things on this show tonight. We're going to talk to you about the danger we're in right now. The danger from inside the United States of America we're in right now. The twisting up of corporate America. We're going to talk about that. The Democratic Party and their alliance with the education system and corporate America. We're going to go into all this really cool stuff tonight. And you know what we're not going to do tonight? We're not going to do what everyone else is doing. I'm not going to breathe life into some gigantic waste of time impeachment. I had a phone call first thing this morning with my production staff, and we all just talked about it. We made the decision. Well, there's going to be an impeachment trial today. Well, okay. Is anything going to happen there? Well, no. I mean, there are going to be some speeches and stuff, but does any of this matter? No. No, none of this matters. We all know how this impeachment trial ends. We all know it's going to be a bunch of blowhard Democrats blowing off, raising campaign money. And look, to be fair, it's not only Democrats. It'll be a bunch of blowhard Republicans raising money. This is an outrage. Here, send $50 so I can repeal Obamacare. Lies. I'm done giving life to it. I have no need to give life to it. I'll let you know when it's over. If anything interesting or funny or something like that happens, I'll play it. But I'm done doing what the left gets everybody on the right to do. I'm done doing it. What is that? Well, they get the right to play the left's game on the left's field with the left's referees enforcing the left's rules. The left would love nothing more than to have every single person on the right discussing the impeachment trial right now. They'd love all of us to sit and chase that shiny object. Oh, look, it's shiny, while they subvert the United States of America from within. I'm not doing it. We're going to talk about what's happening right now, why it's happening, how scary it is. And we're dumb. On the right, we've been dumb. I don't mean you personally. I mean me personally, but I don't mean you personally. But overall, on the right, we have done this time and time and time again. We've done it for 100 years. Because the left is in control of the media, that's not really debatable. Because they're in control of entertainment. Because they're in control of education. It's really those big things. And now they're in control of corporate America too, which makes it even worse. It's hard to fight against that. It's hard to outthink it. It's hard to overcome it. It's hard to break free of the system and talk about anything other than what the system wants you to talk about, right? Go flip through the channels whenever you're done watching the first for the day, which I know you'll be doing, but go flip through the channels. Any other channel out there, right wing, left wing, radio, whatever the case may be, what it's every single person talking about, left and right. Impeachment. Well, we got impeachment. We have Trump's lawyers. We have the Democrat people. Well, this guy gave this speech. And we're all talking about the thing the left wants us focused on, and nobody's talking about the destruction of the United States of America. We have the former FBI assistant director, the former assistant director of the FBI, Frank Filguzzi, I probably screwed that up, says, we need a large-scale de-radicalization of Trump's, people. Here's what he said, quote, what, if anything, could be done to de-radicalize Trump's political cult members and others being recruited into right-wing extremism and terrorism? We also need a more holistic societal response that involves all hands on deck in terms of companies, government, and law enforcement. Everybody pulling together for a de-radicalization approach. That must happen. That is complicated. You've got to deprogram some people who believe Joe Biden didn't win the election. I can't stress this enough. Let me repeat this one more time. This is not your jerkwater uncle, your left-wing uncle on Facebook putting up a little blurb about what we really need is we need the FBI to work with corporate America, to work with the U.S. government to stomp on these Trump supporters. This is the former assistant director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation saying, and I quote, allow me to say it again, involves an all hands on deck in terms of companies, government, and law enforcement, everybody pulling together. Don't you see what they're doing? Doesn't the rest of the right see what they're doing? I know you probably do. You watch this show. How can you not see what's happening? How are we still chasing the new shiny object out there? The entire system is now locking shields against you, against me. And we're worried about some stupid blowhard impeachment trial? I won't do it. I won't do it. There are millions and millions and millions of Trump supporters out there. Don't forget, just because Donald Trump lost an election, and setting Trump himself aside, look at all the people in these crowds. Don't forget about the crowds, the rallies. Shoot, don't forget about the election win. Don't forget, we are talking about almost half the United States of America when we're talking about the people these guys want to deprogram. And again, this is not some idiot on social media putting up an anonymous media post. Ha ha ha, we'll deprogram them and then moving on. These are some of the most significant leading figures in society, in government, in corporations, in the media. Oh, here's what Katie Couric had to say.
Some of them are believing the garbage that they are being fed 24/7 on the internet by their constituents, and they bought into this big lie. And the question is, how are we going to really almost deprogram these people who have signed up for the cult of Trump?
Big lie. The big lie. Let's talk about big lies for a moment. While I was thinking about this, I just pulled something up on my phone. This is from my good friend Matt Walsh. He is over at the Daily Wire. I want you to think about the big lie. Let's talk about big lies for a moment. You remember what happened on the 6th, right? Everybody remembers the video in the Capitol. And then we remember what the narrative was immediately from the left. This is an insurrection, a violent coup, and 5 people were murdered. 5 people murdered. And what did you hear? What did you hear from the right during that? From 99% of the pundits on the right and the politicians on the right. You didn't hear it on this show, but what did you hear? You heard violent insurrection, coup, violent, 5 people murdered. This is violence. This was an insurrection. This was a coup. 5 people murdered, not just from the left, from the right. Everybody on the right trying to be a good little boy and a good little girl. And what's the system saying? I better say it too. Oh, that must be true because everyone's saying it. I mean, it's a violent insurrection coup. 5 people murdered, 5 people murdered, 5 people murdered. This is from my buddy Matt Walsh. He broke this down nicely. I thought I should go ahead and read it for you on the air. We are told that the D.C. riot killed 5 people. Sometimes 7 deaths are linked to the riot. But here's the truth about what you've officially been told. Of the 7 deaths, 2 were officers who committed suicide after the riot. We have never been given any evidence or any reason to believe that their suicides had anything to do with the riot. This is simply an assumption that many have made. Of the 5 who died in or shortly after the riot, 1 was a man with a pre-existing condition who suffered a heart attack. Another suffered a stroke at some point that day and died in a hospital. 1 woman collapsed while in a rush of the people outside the Capitol and died. We were told she was, quote, trampled to death. The medical examiner never confirmed this as a cause of death. We have not been given any additional information. The 4th civilian death was Ashley Babbitt. She was an unarmed woman shot in the face, he just said shot, and killed by a Capitol police officer inside the Capitol. The 5th death was Officer Sicknick. We've been given absolutely no official information about his death at all. The only thing they're telling us is that he was at the riot and later died. The autopsy results are being withheld. Nobody has been arrested by this point in time. He goes on and on and on. Now, let me again tell you, go back and remember. If you want, go back and scroll through social media posts. Forget about the left. They always lie. How many people on the right were saying 5 people were murdered? Don't talk to me about the big lie. The big lie? The system tells a big lie about everything. And the right falls for it every single time. And why does this matter? Well, when we're the minority, which we are now, when we're the minority, especially when it comes to the system, like I already talked about, media, education, all these things. When we're the minority, we have to stand stronger than everyone else. especially when the tidal wave is huge and carrying everybody away. That's the moment you and I have to lock shields and say, wait a minute. There's a narrative forming here. They've lied about the last 90 narratives in order to crush me and help themselves. Maybe I should hold fast for a few, get some facts, and then I'll know what's real and what's not real. That's what we have to do. And look, as much as this pains me to say it, it's time to start pruning your pundit/politician tree. It's time to start changing the channel, adjusting who you listen to. And that doesn't mean everybody who goes along with the system is a bad person. They're certainly not. They're not at all. So look, a lot of these people are my friends. It's not that they're bad. They're not bad. They're weak or they're stupid. And I know that sounds harsh, but I'm not your mommy. I'm your daddy. I'm telling you how it is. We have to stop listening to anybody on our side, looking for leadership from anybody on our side who goes along with what the system is telling them to go along with. We don't have the option now of putting up with that kind of weakness and stupidity. We do not. It is one thing if my 3-year-old is spilling milk on the floor every single day. That's okay. It's fine. I'll clean it up. It's quite another if the guy leading me into battle seems to spill on himself time and time and time again. I don't have the option to be merciful or patient with that person. He has got to lose his command because I need someone else in charge. That is where we are right now on the right. That is where we are. We are at a point in our culture, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit. I'm going to talk about this when it comes to our insane culture on race and communism, things like that. We are at a point now, I don't want you to get down, I don't, but we are at a point now of desperation. We are in desperate times right now to preserve anything that's left of this culture, to keep this country from tearing itself to bits. We no longer have the luxury of putting up with people who simply are too dumb or too weak to fight through it. We don't have that luxury anymore. Times have changed. It is time we adjust with the times. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right. And we need new people in office too. That's why I'm a lifetime member of Mammoth Nation. I can't stress this enough. I'm not a year member. I'm a lifetime member of Mammoth Nation. My money goes to people running for office. Oh, and I get something out of it too. I'm not exactly a selfless person, as you know. I get discounts. When you're a member of Mammoth Nation, you get discounts at more places than I could ever list. Shopping, hotels, travel, the list. Go to mammothnation.com/Jesse and check it out. Go become a member. Help your country and save some money while you're doing it. That's mammothnation.com/Jesse, mammothnation.com/Jesse. We'll be back. Hang with me here for a second. I don't expect you to care about a professional sports league. I don't expect you to care about any particular professional sports team. If you do, that's fine. That's on you, but I don't expect that. But hang with me for a second here. Woke up this morning to this headline of the Dallas Mavericks. They're not playing the national anthem anymore before their games. You know that long-standing U.S. tradition, not playing the national anthem anymore. They asked the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, a man named Mark Cuban, they asked him, was it his decision? He said, quote, "It was my decision, and I made it in November." A source close to Mark Cuban said this, stay with me. Quote, "Source close to Mark Cuban says decision not to play the anthem before the Mavs game isn't because they don't love the U.S., but because many feel the anthem doesn't represent them, and they want to continue discussion of how to represent people from all communities when honoring the U.S. at a game." New Orleans Pelicans head coach Stan Van Gundy echoed this sentiment by saying, quote, "This should happen everywhere. If the anthem needs to be played before sporting events, then play it before every movie, concert, church service, start of every workday at every business. What good reason is there to play the anthem before a game?" Now, again, I don't expect you to care about Mark Cuban, Dallas Mavericks, Stan Van Gundy, the NBA, all of it. I'll never watch another game. That's my choice. I'm not telling you to make that choice. Maybe you're a basketball freak. It's fine. It's fine. But what I am telling you is this. While the nation's worried about some stupid sham of an impeachment trial for a man who's no longer president of the United States, I think it's important you understand. I understand just the kind of trouble we are in here. We have generations, plural, generations of Americans who have been educated to think that their own country sucks. And no nation in the history of mankind can survive if half the country hates the place. It's not humanly possible. And that has nothing to do with America, democracy, monarchy, dictatorship, communism, whatever the case may be. If your nation, on a macro level, if your nation ever gets to the place where the majority of people hate it, you're already done. I hear people ask, like this idiot Stan Van Gundy, well, why are we playing it before a sporting event? Why wouldn't we? Why would a celebration of the country in which we live ever be a bad thing? And if it's become a bad thing for this many people, that's a big, big, big deal. And we saw it this summer. Don't forget this summer. Don't forget how bad it was after St. George Floyd died in Minneapolis, when we saw flocks of people flooding the streets, burning down U.S. cities, the entire system echoing this sentiment about America the evil, America the racist, America this. Look, half the Republican Party, 90% of the Republican pundits. Well, I mean, we really should change that military-based name. We should do that. Deciding America is some evil, racist place. This is not grounded in reality, for one, but two, even if it was, this is national suicide. Patriotism is not some, kind of hammy thing. You only talk about it the 4th of July. Oh, pass me a hot dog while I wave my flag around. Patriotism is essential to the future of a nation, whatever your nation may be, and ours definitely included. The people must love it, embrace it, for it to survive, for it to thrive in any way. And if they don't, we are already done. No, I don't care about some impeachment. I care very deeply that half the United States of America hates it. I care very deeply that I can't sit in a church pew now without a pastor telling me about white privilege. I care very deeply my kids, if they go to government schools, will find out just how bad America sucks, and they'll find out about their evil skin color and their evil history, and this is horrible. And by the time they are young men, if I allow them to immerse themselves in that for 8 hours a day, by the time they're young men, 22, 23, instead of being patriotic, honorable men with a sense of duty to serve their nation, they will become what we have now, a bunch of bitter, miserable young people trying to bring down the country in which they reside. That's what I'm concerned about right now. And I'm blown away how many people are not keenly aware of how dangerous this is. Again, let me repeat, I'm not asking you to give a crap about the Dallas Mavericks or Mark Cuban or any of this, but you had better care very, very, very deeply about what percentage of your country loves your country, because that will determine if your country has a future at all. We have Aunt Jemima, the freaking pancake brand. This is the stuff we're focusing on. They removed the logo of Aunt Jemima, the happy-looking black woman we've all bought her syrup forever, and we've now removed the Aunt Jemima name and Aunt Jemima logo in favor of Pearl Milling, whatever. This is what we're focused on? This is how we're moving things forward in this country? We had better unbreak this whole thing, and quickly. Trust me, impeachment is not the biggest deal going on right now in this country. Now, you know what a big deal is? Home title theft. And I mean a really, really big deal. I need you to understand this. If you're thinking, I don't even know what that is, I didn't either. You're not alone. I didn't even know it was a thing until I opened up my phone and I'm looking at Is that my home title? It was, with my signature on it and my wife's signature on it. And you know this? It took them less than 10 minutes to hack in and get my home title. Less than 10 minutes. They will steal it. They will forge your signature on it, take a loan out against it. You will have to pay it back. It is costing people fortunes right now. Go to HometitleLock.com and sign up before it happens to you. Use the promo code RADIO that gets you 30 free days of protection. We'll be back. It seems like the world's upside down, doesn't it? It seems like all the bad guys are praised as good guys. All the good guys are now praised as bad guys. And if it seems like that, just know this. You didn't have some bad spaghetti tonight. That's real. It's what's happening. They're demonizing you. They're demonizing people we admire. Do you see this CNN headline after the whole Capitol thing? Quote, disproportionate number of current and former military personnel arrested in the Capitol attack, CNN analysis shows. Sorry, I went to community college. Joining me now to talk about that and other things, a man who did not go to community college, a former California assemblyman. He's Chuck DeVore. He's currently with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Chuck, are you the bad guy?
I guess I am the bad guy because maybe I engage in wrongthink, or I don't vote for the right person, or maybe I was in the military for too long. I don't know. There's all kinds of strikes against a guy like me. I think I'm suspect.
Oh, I do too. Well, look, I've known you're a suspect for as long as I've known you, Chuck, but let's set that aside for now. On a serious level, Chuck, it's getting creepy, and it's getting creepy fast. We now have a military stand down where we're going to try to purge all the ickies out of there, and I realize they're just calling that white nationalists, but I've personally been accused of being a white nationalist about 10,000 times in the last 4 years, and it's not true. So you'll have to excuse me if I'm a little suspect.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I guess you could say that at a certain level, every patriotic American could be accused of being a nationalist, and then all you have to do is append whatever their race or ethnicity is on top of that. I think, though, there's a big difference between people who hold extremist views, who, for example, would engage in discrimination, or if they were in the ranks of the military or law enforcement, would be problematic, and would be problematic for purposes of good order and discipline. But that's not what we're talking about here. Jesse, to just set your audience up, CNN really engaged in a reprehensible lie a few days ago when they claimed that members of the military, both active and reserve, pardon me, and veterans, were more than doubly represented among those who were arrested at the January 6th Capitol riots than their proportion nationally. And I break down where they just went totally wrong on their math. It's just very simple math. And it was either a boneheaded mistake or it was something more sinister. And naturally, I lean toward the side of thinking that there were more sinister motives here. The first thing that they did is they talk about the percentage of active duty. That's 1.3 million people, and veterans, that's 18 million. Pardon me, Jesse. They talk about then the percentage of those people as a share of the total population of the United States, even though in their paragraph they talk about the adult population. But the number they give was for total population. And Jesse, the last time I looked, by culture and by law, we are not allowed to have children soldiers in the United States, right? Well, if that's the case, then by definition, if you're on active duty or you're a veteran, you have to be an adult. But they included in their math the 23% of Americans that are under 18. So that was mistake number one. Mistake number two, there's about 1.1 million people in the reserve components. And if you look at how the U.S. Census Bureau defines veteran, they only give you veteran status under the Census Bureau if you serve for 90 days or more during a wartime environment. And so any of your newer National Guard or reservists that haven't been deployed to Afghanistan or Iraq, they wouldn't count as veterans by the Census Bureau definition. So the CNN analysis didn't include any of those 1.1 million people. The last issue, and this is one that you'll really identify with because you exemplify the male preponderance to do high risk and boneheaded things. That has like Jesse Kelly written all over it. And so if you look at the people who were arrested at the Capitol riot, about 87% of them were men. No surprise. Now, among men, about 14.4% are veterans nationally. Veterans are active duty or reserve components. And so if you arrested just a random sample of men only in America, you'd get about 14% veterans in that sample. Well, what was that CNN accused the rioters of being? 14% veteran. What was the share of men? 87%. So it seems to me that the number of veterans and active duty and reservists that were arrested was exactly mathematically what you would expect if it was a representative sample of men and women in America. So the CNN headline is false. It's false.
Chuck, my big problem is, and I went off about this to open up the show, is that everything we're presented anymore, at least initial narratives wise, it's always false. Coronavirus is not going to murder 2 million Americans. We don't have to shut down an economy for it. Cops are not hunting down black men for the color of their skin in the United States of America. There's no statistical evidence to point to that whatsoever. There's no truth to that. There wasn't a violent insurrection attempt to take over the government on the 6th. It was a terrible incident. 5 people loosely associated with it kind of died. They didn't storm in and murder people. There's no evidence for that. Even that officer whose death they tried to use, there's no evidence for any kind of murder or anything like that. But we on the right, so many on the right, go with the false narrative right away to be what, Chuck? To be accepted? Patted on the back? To look compassionate? Why do we fall for this so often?
I think a lot of it, Jesse, has to do with the control of information. The information is tightly controlled initially. The truth gradually trickles out, and to the extent that it does, it often is suppressed or only gets picked up by alternative news sources. And so it takes a while. For example, this CNN story, I called it out yesterday morning in my Daily Caller article. It's still up. It hasn't been changed. There's nothing in it that has been updated or new. I checked just an hour ago, and it's still up. It has false information. And by the way, Jesse, this information is being used by the new Secretary of Defense, Austin, to justify this military-wide stand down to engage in what, struggle sessions? I can imagine it now. I mean, I've been through, and I'm sure you have as well, during the Clinton era, where you had these mass gatherings, these guilt by association meetings where the entire unit had to get together and were basically told that they were all terrible. In this context, I can imagine someone saying, look to your right, look to your left. There's a 50% chance that the person sitting next to you is an extremist. And we have to deal with it. It's like, no, that's not good for morale and retention and recruiting and good order and discipline. The way you solve this problem is the way you always solve these problems. You get with the non-commissioned officers and the officers and you say, look, it is injurious to good order and discipline and to morale if you have knuckleheads that are in your ranks that have problems with your fellow soldiers or sailors or airmen because of their race or ethnicity or anything else that makes them different other than their desire to serve America by swearing an oath to the Constitution that might lead to the death of that enlistee. And you empower your leadership to lead by example and to inspire their troops and to say that, look, sexual harassment or any sort of bigotry against your fellow soldiers is unacceptable. And you will first be counseled if you're caught doing it. And if you don't get the memo, we're gonna kick you out. We're gonna potentially do court-martial proceedings against you. But you don't do it through these mass meetings. I mean, what is this? Is this like Alcoholics Anonymous or something for the military? I mean, this is. How does this help us to improve our war-fighting capabilities?
It doesn't seem like they want to, Chuck. They don't want to improve our warfighting capabilities, and they don't want to improve race relations either. We had great race relations in my Marine Corps infantry platoon. You know what we did? We made fun of each other all the time for issues including race. All the time. We said terrible things to each other, and we loved each other to death. That's how the military's always dealt with race. That's how I dealt with it, not these hand-holding bunch of crap.
Well, and again, the huge concern that I have is that based on this false notion that somehow veterans in the military were overrepresented by more than double among those people arrested for their participation in the riot at the Capitol on January 6th. That is the fundamental undergirding excuse for all of this. You have the new press spokesman for the Pentagon, Kirby, I think is his last name, hinting or saying that we have a culture problem in the military. It's like a culture problem. Well, a culture problem isn't necessarily illegal. It's not necessarily against the Uniform Code of Military Justice. No, it's something far worse and far more difficult to get rid of, right? Because if I have a UCMJ violation, if I do something to my fellow soldier based on stupid views of race or religion, that I'm bigoted, then I have harmed my unit. I've harmed the U.S. Army, and there are provisions to get rid of you. But if it's a cultural issue, if it's just because I'm conservative and maybe I don't vote the right way, or maybe I come from the wrong part of the country, or I ascribe to the wrong religion, that's a much more difficult thing to uproot, because what we're now talking about is someone's subjective standard of who can and can't serve in the military. And I don't like where this is going. This is not healthy. This, again, is not good for improving our warfighting preparedness.
Highly recommend everybody go read Chuck's article in the Daily Caller. It's called How the Media and Pentagon Brass Use Bad Math to Slander Our Troops. Chuck DeVore, thank you, my brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
We're not done yet. You have to wait and see this video. Hang on. Well, as everybody found out last night, I'm a big believer in raising the minimum wage. I mean, what better way to help people raise their standard of living than by forcing businesses to pay them more money? It sounds so simple. Joining me now to talk about that and other things is host of the Roth Effect podcast, Carol Roth. Carol, why shouldn't the minimum wage be like $1,000 an hour? Then everyone will be rich.
I mean, why not just go for a cool million while we're at it? Just
absolutely.
Pick a number. Why not? It's really fascinating to me. Everybody seems to care so much about the little guy, but when you look at a small business owner, they work more than 40 hours a week. They invest their life savings, and nobody guarantees their wages. And in fact, as someone pointed out to me, if something happens to your small business, usually a small bank or one of your debtors are coming after you, you could lose your house. If something goes sideways with someone's job, the government is handing them a check. So if we're talking about fairness, why does everyone hate small business? And I can tell you, big business doesn't like them because they are obviously competition. Unions don't like them because they're hard to unionize. And so the government doesn't like them because it's just easier to deal with the big businesses and the unions. And that's why we have this all-out attack on small businesses.
Carol, I don't understand, though. Aren't all these small business owners millionaires? I mean, there's this small mom and pop boutique right up the street from my house. My wife loves to go there. It's about, 25 by 15, I would say, and they sell these little girly knickknacks that women love. I don't care for it too much. But these people who own this place are millionaires, right? It says right there, business owner.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if that were true. The majority of small businesses that are started don't succeed. Many of the other ones don't earn more than six figures over their lifetime. It is very difficult. And it's also a risk that they're being compensated for. They are risking not only their time and their effort, but their capital. They're sometimes putting in their 401ks, their life savings. So they're being compensated for taking the risk, and they've got a lot that they have at risk. And unfortunately, fortunately, some of them do go on to become millionaires and to earn a nice living. And that's the opportunity that they're pursuing. But it is not a guarantee. There are no guarantees in life, which is why we should not be guaranteeing a wage, even though it sounds like a really nice thing to do. As we know, the road to you-know-where is paved with those good intentions.
Carol, see, this is one of the things that has frustrated me so, and it really hit me at the beginning of the coronavirus stuff. Setting the virus itself aside, when they came out right away, right away and said, well, we have to lock down for 2 weeks and go home. And I was screaming at the top of my lungs, does nobody in this country understand how small businesses work? Does nobody understand how supply chains work? How a simple sandwich shop has to get in meat from here and bread from here, and you can't just pause things. I think we have a lack of small business understanding in America, which is amazing because if I can get it, everybody can get it.
Yeah, I mean, and it is half the economy. It's interesting when you talk about this idea that lockdowns were a thing. It was only really a thing for small businesses and a
Yep.
handful of other big industries. I mean, the reality is that even in the same neighborhood, when a small business was closed, there was all kinds of big businesses, whether it was a grocery store or Walmart or Target or Petco or whoever it was, that was open within their same neighborhood. So many of these big businesses never had to close down. And then you have the government mandating a small business closure, but they never compensated them for that. It's like eminent domain. They've taken your property for the public good for some period of time, and they were never appropriately compensated for that. But meanwhile, we've spent between the Fed and all of these different packages like $6 trillion. I mean, there was plenty of money to give to the small businesses. It just never landed with the small businesses. And if you can look at just the stock market, there were 7 tech stocks in 2020 that gained $3.4 trillion in incremental value last year, while small businesses got crushed. That came from the stimulus, that came from the Fed. Who are we trying to help in this country? Is it really the little guys? Absolutely not. The government does not want the little guy. It stands in the way of their centralized power. They want their big cronies. That's who they're helping out. Wake up, people. Jesse's been pointing this out this whole time. I'm here to back him up.
Carol, who taught you about economics? You clearly didn't learn this in any of our sorry schools.
Well, it's funny. My dad actually taught me a little bit about the common sense finance and economics very early on. I was the kid at 12 who was working in the kitchen of a day camp during summer when I said, hey, Dad, I want to go to day camp. And he took that as, okay, well, we'll put you to work in the kitchen of a day camp. But I do have a degree in economics from a little old school called the Wharton School of Business. So I've got a little bit of that. I'm a former investment banker. I've been studying markets for 2+ decades and basically been participating in markets my whole life. So got a little bit of information about it. But going back to the question, if you're not getting economic and financial literacy at home, which I understand because a lot of people and parents don't understand, this is something that should be happening in the schools, but it's not on purpose because they don't want people to understand this. If you understand this, you have economic freedom. If you have economic freedom, you have actual freedom. There's no power for politicians and government if you have economic freedom.
Okay, so look, I had obviously 2 parents that ran a small business myself. That's how I learned. You went to fancy schmancy Wharton School of Business, which I could never get into, and most of my viewers are never getting into, to be fair. Sorry, everybody, we all know it's true. What do you recommend for the parents? Parents want the best for their kids. There are parents watching right now. I want to start teaching my 10-year-old the basics. What does this person do? Does he just listen to the Roth Effect podcast?
Well, hopefully we'll have a little bit more materials to share with you very soon. I'll tell you about that in a few weeks. But, really, if you go on YouTube, there are all kinds of videos. There are organizations that actually target, I hate to use the word target because that sounds so awful, but they're geared towards children in terms of teaching basic economic concepts. And, it's one of those things that you should just continue to have an open discussion about. Learn both sides. Learn what one group is saying, learn what another group is saying, and ask yourself, what are the unintended consequences? Because a lot of the arguments are based on feelings and these concepts that are not based in math. You have to keep asking you questions about math. If you want a really good set, now maybe not for 10-year-olds, maybe more for 14-year-olds, really great set of videos. Go look up Milton Friedman. Go look up Thomas Sowell. These are great economists that used to be on shows like Donahue, when we had talk shows that brought this information into the public discourse. You have Zsa Zsa Gabor in one segment and Milton Friedman in the other. Those still exist online. So even though you may not be getting them from your direct TV, you can go online and look them up right now, and they still hold true today.
I know people are going to find this shocking, but I can read on occasion, and allow me to just echo that Milton Friedman's book, Free to Choose, will teach you more about economics. If you just read that book cover to cover once or twice, you'll know more about economics than every idiot who works in our government. Speaking of the idiots who work in our government, will you describe what a nation's credit rating actually means? Not a personal credit score, I can cover that. Describe what a nation's credit rating means.
Well, it doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot, if you want to be perfectly honest. It's a little bit of smoke and mirrors, but it's where everybody else, whether it be other nations or other investors, how good they feel about the chance that that nation would likely default on its debts in the future. And so, I kind of laugh about this because every time we have a rating agency, whether it was the rating agencies during the Great Recession who were talking about, the mortgage industry, whether we have ratings for the different states and their credit worthiness, whether that's the ratings for the credit worthiness of our nation, they're always wrong. So I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in it. They're always behind the 8 ball. And, if they're saying something's wrong, something's really wrong by the time it comes out of their mouth.
Carol Roth, everybody. You're the best. Thank you, Carol. All right. We're still not done. Hang on. I love it when people who aren't used to using technology use technology. There was a point in time, my old man had one of the smartphones, and this is 3-4 years ago. Borrow his phone for something one day. I'm out visiting my folks, and I look, and he had something like 1,100 unread text messages on his phone. I'm not making this up. I don't mean no response. I mean 1,100 unread ones. And I'm, Dad, what? These might be important. Well, I don't know how to text. It was one of the funniest experiences I've ever done in my life. And now, he'll send you a yes, no, if you send him something, because I finally got him talked into it. But it cracks me up. And this new era of technology, because everything has to be technology now. You can't, God forbid, you meet somebody and shake their hand and look them in the eye. Everything has to be Zoom calls and Zoom meetings, or we're all going to die, has really led to some hilarious things happening. But this thing the video came out yesterday. I don't know when this actual court appearance was, of a couple lawyers and a judge doing, an online court proceeding. And some guy, bless his heart, hits some cat filter on his phone. And you know what? Just enjoy.
Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings. You might want to
we're trying to. Can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
I can see that.
Oh, that's as good as it gets. All right, we'll do this again tomorrow.